Welcome back, my friends, to the Derate the Hate podcast. I am Wilk from wilksworld.com, and this is a special edition of the Derate the Hate podcast. And it's actually just going to be the audio from a video blog I did for our wilksopinion.com blog. So with that, we'll jump right into it and go from there. All right, so I am Wilk from wilksworld.com. Wilksopinion.com is the blog, and this isn't normally how I do things. Normally I don't do any kind of video of myself doing anything, but I got a few things that just have to be said, and it's probably going to ruffle a few feathers, but you know what? It's stuff that's got to be said, and I'm calling it freedom shaming, okay? What I want to do is I want to talk about hashtag freedom shaming. And the reason that I'm doing this is because lately I've seen so many people that, you know, whether it be online or some in person, not nearly as many in person as online, but that are just pounding on people for the idea that they, you know, the idea of standing up for liberty. That, you know, it's almost as if they believe that you can't believe that this virus, this thing that we're dealing with as a country, as a world actually, is real and you know, is of concern to everybody, as well as believing that we also need to stand up for our rights as citizens in a free country. And I'm calling it freedom shaming. I don't know. I just came up with that, and I think it sounds pretty good, so we're gonna go with that. Like I said, this is an experiment for me. I don't normally do video, but it's got to be said, and we're gonna go with it. And I'm also gonna put it on my podcast as a special edition. But first, I just want to say, reasonable people can disagree on what the response should have been to this virus, but irrational people can't seem to get beyond their emotions, and that's one of the things that I do talk about in my podcast. Is people who can't get beyond their emotions. Their emotions dictate their actions. Once their emotions have taken over, it's pretty much over. You know, they can't see beyond that. So reasonable people can disagree on what should have been done, but you know, as more real-time evidence comes out about this virus, we're starting to find things are not as they appeared. Of course, this virus is very real, and it's very deadly to a portion of the population, and that's tragic. All death is tragic, but you know, death is the result of life. So we need to understand that we can't put everything on hold, and we can't expect all of our neighbors to put their lives on hold for the idea that we have to deal with this virus. The problem we run into as a people is when we cannot civilly disagree on how things should have been done or how things are still being done. I mean, there's still millions of our neighbors, millions of our fellow countrymen under lockdown right now, and their livelihoods are being destroyed. What does that mean? And what does it mean to say that you can believe in both? You know, the way I look at it, there's three different kinds of attitudes, three different perceptions of this virus and how it's being handled by our government and by the people. One is there's a group of people who their sole focus is the fact that this virus is deadly, and it's very deadly for a small portion of the population. That is very real, and everybody should understand that. It is very real, and it's very deadly for a small portion of the population. That's one group of people. There's another group of people that are very concerned about our liberties, our liberties as individuals, and the tyrannical government overreach that we are facing in many of our states, and that's a very real concern for a lot of people, as well it should be. And then there's another group that is just incredibly concerned about the mental and the financial side effects of these government-imposed lockdowns. These three groups of people do not have to be mutually exclusive to one group or the other. Small infographic right here, hoping that you can see it, right? Stop freedom shaming. We got the group right here that understands this virus is very real, very deadly for a group of our population. We got this one right here. People that are very concerned about the idea of our individual liberties being squashed by tyrannical government overreach. And then we got this one. Incredibly concerned about the mental and the financial effects of this government imposed shutdown. Like I said, they can overlap. That's me right there. Okay? I get it. I get all three. I'm very much in all three boats, all three categories. I totally get it. Where I get very, very frustrated, and I see it all the time online, is you get these, these keyboard warriors out there. I've got a couple different websites. I respond to a lot of different news articles online, do a lot of different things. And these keyboard warriors out there that say stuff to people that they would never dream of saying in real life. I've had people wish sickness and illness upon my family, wish death upon me. I see it every single day. The stuff that people say is just outrageous, and I just, I don't get it. This is not stuff that these people would say in real life. They just wouldn't. You know it, I know it, and people have got to get over themselves in certain respects, because the idea that you would say to somebody that you wish that they had this illness so they would die, or that their family members would die, as punishment for stepping out of line with the mainstream narrative. What is that? Are you kidding me? Why would you say that? Why would you do that? What kind of person does that make you? Get over yourself. That is very, very just sick. That is messed up. Okay. Then you got these educated elite. I saw a video the other day that somebody had posted about, had this educated elite, condescending schmuck on there talking about, people like to wrap themselves up in their freedom and First and Second Amendment, and, that they don't understand the First and Second Amendment, because the First Amendment requires, comes with some implied responsibility that you be educated before you have a voice. And let's get real. That dude was pretty much saying what the educated elite always say is, when they say educate yourself or get educated, they're saying figure out a way that your mentality falls in line with my mentality, and then you can have a voice. Those kind of people are the same people that have destroyed our education system. Yeah, condescending, wrap yourself up in a flag, mom, grandma, apple pie, making fun of people's Second Amendment rights, and what's this guy going to do when all hell breaks loose and the system breaks down, and the people that wish to do him and his family harm are coming and knocking at the door? What's he going to do? Online shame him into submission? I don't think so, dude. You guys really need to get your stuff together, because that's the kind of attitude that really, really gets under people's skin. But maybe that's why you do it, right? Okay. This virus, obviously, very real, very tragic. All death is tragic. But again, all life ends in death. And we have to understand that. But our government's response is the real issue here. And when I say individual liberties and freedom, I look at everything. Almost in every case, I look at everything through the perspective of individual liberty, because I don't believe life is worth anything without liberty. And to lock down the healthy in an effort to somehow explain or somehow make people feel better about themselves, keeping some of our fellow Americans and some of our fellow human beings safe. They talk safer at home, safer here, safer there. Ask about all those people that are in the long-term care facilities, how safe they are being locked down. Okay? That's where the majority of the deaths are happening. And quite honestly, we need to focus more on keeping the more vulnerable safe than locking down everybody else and destroying their livelihoods. You can't tell me that in outstate Minnesota is the state in which I live, and our governor is just completely clueless on how to take care of this problem. He's treating everything like it's Minneapolis, St. Paul, but we see the same thing in New York State, Michigan, Illinois. It's the same thing that we deal with as outstate folks in almost all situations. They believe we have to treat the whole state of Minnesota like Minneapolis, St. Paul. They have to, treat the whole state of Illinois like it's Chicago, the whole state of Michigan like it's Detroit, the whole state of New York like it's New York City. This is not reality. It's not reality. It never has been. It never will be. The people in outstate Minnesota have so little in common with the people that live in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Really, the only thing that they have in common is the two letters at the end of their address. When they're sending in their bills, it's not the right process. And the idea that you're going to keep a small shop owner or a small business owner in outstate Minnesota shut down, but you're going to let every big box store out there open, Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot, Menards, these stores, it is insane right now. I've been doing home improvement projects on my little farm here for the last 5 years. I'm at Menards almost every weekend. I wouldn't even go close to there right now because the whole parking lot, you got to drive around in the parking lot just to find a parking spot. Never been so busy. Okay, there's people in there packed in there like sardines. You're going to tell me that's safer than the little mom and pop shop owner or mom and pop cafe in Sabika, Minnesota that might get 5 or 10 customers in a day, but that person's gonna have to stay shut down while Menards and Walmart here in the bigger areas are open and just jamming with business, record profits. Okay, I'm not gonna knock people for profits. I get it, but yeah, the idea that we're gonna let big box stores do what they want to do, and the small mom and pop shops in outstate areas that probably haven't even seen a case of COVID-19 are going to stay on lockdown because the governor said so. Really, that is messed up. And then, like I said, reasonable people can disagree on certain things. The CDC can't even make up their mind on what's right and what's wrong at this point. We started off, with certain guidelines and looking at models that, most of those models, let's face it, none of those models have been right so far. Everything's been wrong. It's all a learning curve. I get it. It's all part of the deal. They've got to figure out things as they go along. But to ignore real-time data and just kind of go with these flawed models that were based on guesses, based on this, but they call it science. Science, really? Sounds like a hypothesis that went wrong because the stuff has not been right from the beginning. Just this week, the CDC, they can't make up their minds. It used to be surfaces. We had to worry about surfaces. We had to clean everything with Lysol wipes and wear gloves. And they're making, certain places they're making you wear masks and this and that. I mean, does it really help? Do we believe that? I don't know. It could change next week because it keeps on changing all the time. The only thing that doesn't change is people are still on lockdown. There's still people's businesses out there that aren't making any money. There's people's livelihoods that are being destroyed. And you can't get correct information because, big mainstream media is just a, hate-filled sewer pipe, and social media is let's just face it, social media has become just a absolute dumpster fire of misinformation and lies. I mean, we've got, people posting stuff that Facebook doesn't agree with, so they're graying it out or blacking it out or just erasing it completely. When did they become the arbiter of truth? And whose truth is it? I've had a number of my things censored in the past weeks that really they use the same garbage information that the media is saying, which is not, any kind of truth in many instances, and they use that as their facts, and that's how they become the arbiter of truth, and then they censor people that they don't agree with. And what the hell? Are you kidding me? There's plenty of real-time evidence out there that suggests that the lockdown was not the case, but, they're never gonna go with that because you can't prove a negative. They'll say, okay, the lockdown did this. Originally, we started out 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Got to flatten the curve, right? Well, that 2 weeks is now turned into over 2 months. This curve has been pushed out until Christmas. That's obviously a bit of an exaggeration, but reality of it is that when this is going to be done, or are they going to go for an all-out cure? There's some people going out for all-out cure. This Dr. Fauci, Dr. Fauci at first was, we've got to keep everybody locked down until we find a cure. Now today or yesterday, I can't remember, now all of a sudden he's saying, oh yeah, prolonged lockdowns are going to cause irreparable damage. Well, yeah, there's a lot of us that have been saying that from the beginning. You can't continue to keep people locked down and expect things just to go back to normal when they decide that when the powers that be, the kings of these little, these governors, some of them think they're kings of small countries, and what they're going to be the determiner of how we're going to live our lives from now on. That's not the right way to go about this. That's not the right way at all. But there are a lot of people, like I said, going back to my concept, freedom shaming. People like me say this stuff, and then I get, I get berated and beat up online. People wishing harm upon me, wishing harm upon my family. What is that? Are you kidding me? You got family members at family members' throats because one person believes that they we should open things back up, and the other person believes that we should keep things locked down. That's not right. It's not right either. Are you kidding? You can't do that. The amount of hate and disdain that we're seeing between people of differing opinions is unlike anything I've ever seen in my lifetime, and unlike anything I've ever wanted to see. It's brutal. Blind hatred for people that you will never ever meet, never encounter in real life, and the stuff that people say is just insane. We've got to get past that. We've got to understand, like the thing said, there's people of different opinions, but the lockdown is not the right way to go. We can't continue keeping people locked down. We had multiple states this week reporting that there's more people committing suicide than there are dying of the COVID-19 crisis. Okay, how do we explain that? The governors, say, well, we're following the science. No, you're not following the science. You're following flawed models based on hypotheses from people that may or may not even know what they're talking about. Okay, I'm no epidemiologist, but I can tell you this. There's not a consensus. There is not a consensus by any stretch of the imagination. And for anybody to say that there is, it's an absolute lie. Absolute, unadulterated lie for people to say that there's a consensus. That's what they like to say, just so they can feel better about themselves. Well, there's a consensus. We're going to go with the science. There's not a consensus on this COVID-19 crisis. There's not a consensus on how it should have been dealt with from the beginning. There's not a consensus on the data that's coming out. They're conflating data between, the immunities based on people that have had it and the people that currently have it, and whether those immunities are going to, the antibody tests and the current sickness tests, and they can't even determine how to keep those apart. And they're conflating the numbers, and none of these numbers are right. Everything is liquid in this situation. But one thing is certain. One thing that we do know is this continued lockdown is killing people. This continued lockdown is tearing people apart, tearing families apart, tearing apart businesses that people have worked their whole lives to build. Every day they're putting out different businesses, different stuff online of different businesses no longer going to be opening. They've tried to hold out. They can't hold out any longer. Business is done, gone. Everything that they'd worked for, all the employees, gone. No job, no more. How many of those people are going to kill themselves? Depression is a huge issue for people in isolation. Okay, there's no question about it. Health effects of isolation. You got a 30% higher mortality rate, I think it is, for people who find themselves in isolation, can't get out amongst the people. Okay, these are real-time numbers. Everything else is fluid. So, we know the effects of lockdown. We know that it's going to destroy businesses. We know that people's livelihoods are going to be destroyed because of this. What we don't know is how many are going to die because we don't open things back up. And they'll say, well, we saved so many lives because of the lockdown. Well, there's no way to prove a negative, so we can't ever say, no, you were wrong. And they know that. And they're going to use that. And it's unfortunate. But I'm here to tell you this. To quote, I think it was read in Shawshank Redemption, either get busy living or get busy dying. If you don't think that it's right time to open up, nobody's going to force you to leave your house. If you want to wrap your house in bubble wrap and cellophane and have everything delivered and wipe it all down with Lysol, you can get people to deliver your groceries. You can get people to deliver pizza. You can get people to deliver Lysol wipes and toilet paper, whatever you want. Wipe it all down before you take it in the house and wear a mask while doing it. That's fine. Nobody's gonna shame you for doing it, and if they are, they shouldn't. because that's wrong. And just like that, you shouldn't be shaming people that want liberty either. It shouldn't be freedom shaming. So, anyways, this is Wilk from wilksworld.com. That's Wilk's opinion. I guess they call that a vlog. It's normally a blog. This is a video blog that I'm doing. I'll also put the audio on my DerateTheHate.com podcast. And I don't know. Hopefully this helps somebody. Hopefully somebody needed to hear something of it. And I don't know. Do me a favor. Share it. Let me know what you think. Write me a message. Take care. Well, I hope everybody was able to get something out of that. And with that, I'll sign off like I do all the time on our Derate the Hate podcast, saying when you get back out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for what you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each day what you want that day to be. Thank you very much.